I'm Denise, 32, female. I live in a quiet suburban town, in a small house that took me years of hard work to afford. For 17 of those years, my life was dedicated to my role as a senior occupational therapist at a facility that prided itself on compassionate care. It was more than a job. It was my identity, my community, and my passion. But I was about to learn that loyalty, especially in the corporate world, is often a one-way street. This is the story of how my 17-year career was callously discarded because I was deemed too expensive, and how I made sure the man who fired me would never forget the following Monday. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. 17 years, it's a lifetime. I started at Wellness Rehab Center when I was just a fresh-faced 22-year-old armed with a degree and a heart full of idealism. The center was smaller then, a place where everyone knew each other, from the janitorial staff to the director. We were a family, united by the common goal of helping people reclaim their lives after injury or illness. I poured everything I had into my work. I wasn't just an employee, I was a builder. I developed new therapy programs, mentored junior therapists, and built a reputation for handling the most challenging cases with a blend of expertise and empathy. My patient satisfaction scores were consistently the highest in the facility, and my referral rates from local physicians were a significant source of revenue. I remembered the early days, the potluck lunches, the impromptu celebrations for patient milestones. We were a team. Over the years, the center was acquired by a larger healthcare corporation. The family atmosphere slowly eroded, replaced by spreadsheets, performance metrics, and a revolving door of managers who saw patients as numbers and staff as expenses. The latest in this long line of corporate suits was Michael, a man whose ambition was as transparent as his cheap cologne. He arrived 6 months ago with a mandate to trim the fat and optimize efficiency. He was a man who walked with a clipboard and saw the world through the cold lens of profit and loss. He knew nothing about patient care, nothing about the delicate art of rehabilitation. To him, we were all just cogs in a machine, and some cogs were apparently more expensive than others. Despite the changing environment, I kept my head down and focused on my work. My patients needed me. I believed my long tenure, my spotless record, and the undeniable value I brought to the center made me untouchable. I was the bedrock of the therapy department, the person for advice, the keeper of institutional knowledge. The newer therapists, like young Emily, a bright-eyed but inexperienced OT who had started just a few months prior, looked up to me. I was happy to guide her, just as I had guided dozens of others over the years. I saw my seniority not as a privilege, but as a responsibility. I was earning a good salary, yes, but it was a salary I had earned 17 times over, through years of dedication, innovation, and unwavering commitment. I had no idea that the very foundation I had helped build was about to be systematically dismantled, with me as the first casualty. The signs were there, subtle at first. Michael started shadowing my sessions, not to learn, but to scrutinize. He questioned my methods, my billing codes, my patient hours. He praised Emily's cost-effective group therapy models in staff meetings, a passive-aggressive jab at my more individualized, and thus more expensive, treatment plans. I felt a growing sense of unease, a cold dread that I dismissed as paranoia. After all, they wouldn't dare, would they? The Friday it happened started like any other. I finished my last session, a particularly rewarding one with an elderly stroke patient who had finally managed to button his own shirt. It was these small victories that fueled my passion. I was documenting my notes when Michael's assistant appeared at my door. "Michael needs to see you in his office," she said, her eyes refusing to meet mine. That was the first alarm bell. I walked the long hallway to his corner office, the one that used to belong to our old director, a kind man who knew every patient by name. The walk felt like a mile. Michael was sitting behind a large, imposing desk, a self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips. He didn't ask me to sit. He gestured vaguely to the chair opposite him, as if I were a minor inconvenience. "Denise," he began, his tone dripping with false sincerity. "As you know, we're in a period of restructuring. We're looking at ways to make the facility more financially sustainable for the long term." He droned on about budgets and margins, words that meant nothing in the context of human care. I stood there, my heart pounding in my chest, a cold knot forming in my stomach. I knew where this was going. He finally got to the point. "Your position," he said, pausing for dramatic effect, has been made redundant. After 17 years, after building my life and career within these walls, I was redundant. The word hung in the air, sterile and cruel. I finally found my voice, redundant. I have the highest patient load in the department. My outcomes are the best on record. He shrugged, a dismissive gesture that invalidated my entire career. Your salary is also the highest. He countered, as if this were a crime. Frankly, Denise, you make too much money. We can hire 2 junior therapists for what we pay you. It's just business. That was the line that shattered my composure. Business, I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of shock and rage. This is a healthcare facility, Michael, not a factory. These are people's lives. He was unmoved. He pushed a thin manila envelope across the desk. Your severance package, he said, it's standard. He then had the audacity to add, we'll need you to clear out your desk immediately. Security will escort you. The humiliation was a physical blow. To be treated like a common criminal after 17 years of faithful service was unthinkable. As the security guard, a man I'd shared coffee with for a decade, stood awkwardly by my office door, I packed my personal belongings into a cardboard box. My colleagues, including my friend Sarah, a compassionate speech therapist, watched in stunned silence, their faces a mixture of fear and sympathy. Emily, the junior therapist, stood in the corner, looking pale and guilty. She wouldn't look at me. As I was walked out of the building, the box of my professional life in my arms, I passed Michael in the hallway. He gave me a curt, triumphant nod. It was in that moment, seeing the smug satisfaction on his face, that the shock began to recede, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. He thought he had won. He thought he had cut a major expense from his budget. He had no idea what he had just unleashed. He thought this was over. I knew it was just the beginning. The next Monday was going to be very, very fun. The weekend was a blur of disbelief and fury. My initial shock gave way to a wave of methodical anger. Michael's justification, that I made too much money, was insulting, but I suspected there was more to it. Corporations don't just fire their most productive, high-rated employee without a deeper reason, even a flawed one. My severance package was insultingly small, the bare legal minimum. It was a clear sign they wanted me gone quickly and quietly, but I wasn't going to be quiet. My first call was to Sarah, my friend and colleague. We met at a coffee shop far from the clinic, the air thick with paranoia. I can't believe he did that, she whispered, constantly looking over her shoulder. Everyone is terrified. He called a meeting right after you left and announced a new, streamlined staffing model. He introduced Emily as the new lead OT, so it was a direct replacement. Emily, the junior I had been mentoring, was now in my role. It stung, but it also confirmed my suspicions. This wasn't just a budget cut. It was a calculated move. There's more, Sarah said, leaning in closer. Michael has been spending a lot of time with Emily, closed. Door meetings, lunches, people are talking. The pieces started to click into place. It wasn't just about my salary, it was about replacing me with someone younger, cheaper, and perhaps more pliable. Or maybe there was an even more personal connection. That evening, I did something I never thought I'd do. I delved into the world of social media forensics. It didn't take long. Emily's social media profiles were mostly private, but her friends were not. A few clicks led me to a photo album from a recent weekend trip. There, smiling for the camera, arm in arm, were Emily and Michael. It wasn't a professional outing. It was a cozy, intimate picture. My heart sank. This wasn't just nepotism. It felt like a coordinated betrayal. He hadn't just fired me for a younger, cheaper model. He'd fired me for his girlfriend. The anger was now white hot, but I knew I needed more than a photograph. I needed proof of professional misconduct, something that would hit the corporation where it hurt, its liability and its bottom line. I thought back to Michael's obsession with my billing practices. Why was he so focused on that? It occurred to me that if he was trying to justify my firing, he might have been looking for, or creating, a reason. I still had my company-issued tablet. In their haste to get me out the door, they had deactivated my network access, but they hadn't wiped the device. I had obsessively downloaded all my patient files and billing records to the local drive for a presentation I was preparing. A presentation on efficiency and patient outcomes, ironically enough. I spent the entire weekend poring over my records, comparing them to the billing codes and treatment protocols, and then I found it. Over the past 3 months, subtle changes had been made to some of my closed patient files. Billing codes had been altered, upcharged for services that were complementary or bundled. My signature had been digitally forged on the updated documents. It was clumsy work, but effective. On paper, it looked like I had been deliberately overbilling, defrauding the company and insurance providers. The amounts were small on a per-patient basis, but aggregated over dozens of files. It created a pattern of financial misconduct. It was the perfect manufactured excuse to fire a high-earning employee for cause, which would also explain the pathetic severance package. He wasn't just replacing me, he was framing me to justify it. He had laid a trap, and I had walked right into it. But the fool had made one critical mistake. He had left a digital trail. The file modification dates and user logs on the cached documents pointed directly to a single user account, Michael's. Armed with evidence of a personal relationship and digital proof of fraudulent activity, I knew my next move couldn't be a direct confrontation. Michael was a manager. He would have the backing of the local HR department, which he likely controlled. I needed to go higher to someone who would see Michael not as a colleague, but as a massive legal and financial liability. I needed to find the king, not the pawn. My target was David Chen, the CEO of the parent corporation. Getting to him wouldn't be easy. A direct email would likely be filtered out by an army of assistants. I needed an inside track, a way to bypass the corporate firewall. I remembered Sarah mentioning that our facility was due for a major accreditation review in the coming weeks. These reviews were a huge deal, and the corporate office, especially the CEO, paid very close attention to them. A bad review could jeopardize contracts and tarnish the company's reputation. This was my opening. My second crucial call was to a former colleague, Mark, who had left our facility a year ago to take a job as a regional compliance officer for a different healthcare company. He was an expert in healthcare regulations and billing fraud. I laid out the whole story for him over a secure video call. He listened intently, his expression growing more serious with each detail. "Denise, this is bad," he said when I finished. "This isn't just wrongful termination. This is insurance fraud, forgery, and a massive compliance breach. He forged your signature on medical billing documents. That's a felony." Mark helped me understand the full gravity of the situation. The personal relationship with Emily created a clear conflict of interest and opened the door to a hostile work environment claim. The fraudulent billing was a time bomb that could trigger federal investigations and massive fines. He advised me on how to frame the evidence. "You need to present this as a concerned former employee who is worried about the company's integrity and legal exposure," he said. "Don't make it about personal revenge. Make it about protecting the company from a rogue manager. They'll have no choice but to listen." He also gave me a critical piece of information, the name of the lead auditor for the upcoming accreditation review. Through his network, he learned that the auditor was notoriously strict and had a history of coming down hard on facilities with even minor compliance issues. My plan began to crystallize. It wouldn't be a single attack, but a multi-pronged assault. I would contact the CEO, not as a disgruntled employee, but as a whistleblower. I would also send an anonymous, carefully worded tip to the accreditation agency, pointing them toward potential billing irregularities in the occupational therapy department. My final piece of the alliance came from an unexpected place. I reached out to several of my long-term patients, the ones with whom I had built years of trust. I explained, without giving away my entire plan, that I had been let go and that I had concerns about the continuity and quality of care at the facility. These weren't just patients, they were influential members of the community, lawyers, business owners, even a local journalist. I knew that a few laced calls to the facility's patient advocacy line, expressing concern over the abrupt departure of their senior therapist, would create internal pressure and corroborate the narrative that something was deeply wrong. The stage was being set. Michael thought he had won a small battle on Friday. He had no idea he was about to walk into a full-scale war on Monday. Sunday was a day of meticulous preparation. Every email, every document, and every phone call had to be perfectly orchestrated. My first action was to draft the email to the CEO, David Chen. Following Mark's advice, I wrote it not as an angry, fired employee, but as a loyal, 17-year veteran with grave concerns for the company's well-being. The subject line was concise and professional. Urgent compliance and HR liability concern at Wellness Rehab Center. In the email, I introduced myself and my long tenure. I explained that I was recently terminated, but my reason for writing was not to contest my dismissal, but to report serious misconduct that I believed put the entire corporation at risk. I attached a password-protected zip file. It contained the social media photo of Michael and Emily, screenshots of the altered billing records with the modification logs clearly showing his user ID, and a detailed, unemotional summary of the events. I wrote that I believed a manager was engaging in a conflict of interest relationship, had fired a senior employee to promote his partner, and was systematically committing billing fraud, forging my signature to do so. I concluded by stating that I had kept my own copies of everything, and that I trusted he would take this matter seriously before it attracted the attention of outside regulatory bodies. I sent the email at precisely 9:00 p.m. Sunday evening, knowing that executives often check their emails late at night to prepare for the week ahead. Next, I turned my attention to the accreditation agency. I used a secure, anonymous email service to send my tip. The message was short and to the point. To the review board, I recommend a thorough audit of the occupational therapy department's billing from the last 6 months at Wellness Rehab Center. Specifically, compare the billing codes submitted by senior therapists versus junior therapists for similar procedures. You may find significant recent irregularities. I didn't include any names or details about my firing. I just planted the seed of doubt, knowing the auditors would do the rest. Finally, I followed up with my patient allies. I gave them a simple script: call the facility's corporate compliance hotline on Monday morning and express their distress over my sudden and unexplained departure. They were to emphasize their concern that their care was being compromised and that they had lost faith in the facility's management. A single call could be dismissed. A dozen calls from prominent patients could not. As I shut down my computer, a sense of calm washed over me. The emotional turmoil of the weekend had been replaced by the quiet confidence of a well-laid plan. I had done everything I could. I had aimed my weapons not at Michael directly, but at the corporate structures he answered to. His fate was no longer in my hands. It was in the hands of auditors, lawyers, and a CEO who now had a ticking time bomb sitting in his inbox. I went to bed early and slept soundly for the first time since Friday. Michael was probably sleeping well too, basking in the glow of his petty victory. He was looking forward to a Monday where he had successfully cut costs. I was looking forward to a Monday where his entire world would come crashing down around him. I didn't go to the clinic on Monday. My presence wasn't required. The seeds I had planted would grow on their own. Instead, I went to the same coffee shop where I had met Sarah. I ordered a coffee, opened my laptop, and waited. The first tremor hit around 9:15 a.m. Sarah sent me a text. Hand staff meeting just called for 10 a.m. Mandatory. Michael looks like he's seen a ghost. I smiled. The CEO office had clearly been busy. David Chen was a man known for his ruthless efficiency. He would not have taken my email lightly. He would have immediately looped in his legal and compliance teams, who would have worked through the night to verify my claims. The digital evidence was irrefutable. At 9:45 a.m., I received another text from Sarah. 2 people in suits just walked in, a man and a woman. They don't look happy. They went straight into Michael's office and closed the door. This was faster than I expected. Corporate had dispatched their crisis team. The patient calls must have started flooding the compliance hotline right at 9:00 a.m., creating the exact internal chaos I had hoped for. The timing was perfect. Just as Michael was dealing with the fallout from the patient complaints, the corporate executioners arrived. Sarah's next text came at 10:05 a.m., meeting postponed indefinitely. Michael just got walked out of the building. By the suits, he was carrying a box. The irony was so perfect, so beautifully symmetrical, that I almost laughed out loud. He was given the same undignified, humiliating exit he had forced upon me just 3 days earlier. He didn't even get the courtesy of a security guard he knew. He got the cold, impersonal efficiency of the corporate office. An hour later, my phone rang. The caller ID showed the main number for the corporate headquarters. It was a woman from the HR department, her voice calm and professional. Denise. She said, "This is Amelia from corporate HR. We are calling to offer our sincerest apologies for the recent actions at the Wellness Rehab Center. Mr. Chen has personally reviewed your case. The actions of the former general manager were unacceptable and do not reflect the values of our company." She continued, explaining that Michael had been terminated effective immediately for gross misconduct. She also mentioned that an internal investigation had revealed significant irregularities in his management and billing oversight. She then made me an offer, my job back, with a promotion to Director of Rehabilitation Services for the entire facility, a significant raise, and back pay for my time off. They were also offering a substantial settlement for the wrongful termination and defamation, provided I signed a non-disclosure agreement. I took a moment before answering. The offer was tempting. It was vindication. But I knew I could never go back. The trust was broken not just with management, but with the very idea of corporate health care. Thank you for the offer, I said calmly. I appreciate it, but I will be declining the offer to return. I will, however, have my lawyer contact you regarding the settlement. The silence on the other end of the line was telling. They had expected me to be grateful. They had underestimated me, just as Michael had. The aftermath was swift and decisive. My lawyer, funded by a portion of the generous settlement I eventually received, handled all the negotiations. The non-disclosure agreement was standard, and I was happy to sign it. My revenge was never about public humiliation. It was about professional justice. I had no interest in dragging their name through the mud. I had already achieved my objective. Sarah kept me updated on the internal fallout. The corporate team stayed on site for a week, conducting a thorough audit. Emily, Michael's girlfriend, was quietly let go a week later, her position eliminated, as part of the ongoing restructuring she had benefited from. The facility was placed under the direct supervision of a regional director until a new permanent manager could be found. The entire culture of the place was being reset. The anonymous tip to the accreditation board led to a surprise inspection that uncovered the billing fraud. The facility was hit with a heavy fine and placed on a strict probationary period, ensuring that true, systemic change would be enforced. My actions had not just avenged my own mistreatment, they had forced a necessary course correction that would ultimately benefit both the staff and the patients. As for me, I took a few months off. I traveled, I reconnected with friends and family, and I allowed myself to heal from the betrayal. The settlement gave me financial freedom, the one thing Michael had tried to take away from me. It gave me the power to choose my own path. I didn't stay out of the game for long. My passion for helping people was still there, stronger than ever. But I knew I couldn't work within the confines of a corporate system again, so with 2 other experienced therapists who had grown tired of the corporate grind, I started my own private practice. We built it from the ground up, based on the values that had been eroded at my old job, patient, first care, ethical practices, and a supportive, collaborative environment for therapists. We opened our doors 6 months after I was fired. Many of my former patients, who had been following my journey, were our first clients. Our reputation grew quickly, built on the very principles of excellence and integrity that Michael had tried to punish me for. We became a thriving practice, a beacon of what healthcare could and should be. I never saw Michael again, but I heard through the grapevine that he was unable to find another management position in the healthcare industry. The digital footprint of his fraud and the story of his spectacular downfall followed him. He had traded his career for a petty cost-saving measure and a short-sighted affair. He had tried to reduce my 17 years of dedication to a number on a spreadsheet, and in the end, that's all he became, a liability that was quickly and efficiently deleted. My new beginning was built on the ashes of the career he tried to destroy, and I wouldn't have had it any other way.